for tapping in to the Untapped Keg podcast. I'm RJ Zimmerman, and today you're in for a very special episode because I'm going to be interviewed on this podcast, which I've taken other people's podcasts and we've run the interviews that I've been on before, but this is going to be a special treat because it's somebody who has known me since I was a kid, like the formative years, grade school, high school. And then, we kind of went our separate ways and lived life, and we reconnected over social media, and it's been really fantastic. But I'd like to introduce my friend, Garret Woodland. How are you doing, Garret?
Hey, I'm good, good. I'm happy to be here. Yeah,
Yeah, this is going to be fun. You pitched me this idea, and I was like, that is such a fantastic idea because I've done 200 and some odd episodes of this podcast and I've never been interviewed on it. And so that sounds like a really great idea.
awesome. Yeah, I'm excited too. I I've never really been part of something like this before, but I've always wanted to be. And when I came across your work, I was like, oh, I kind of have an in because I know him and I remember him, and we went to high school and grade school together. So I thought, why not, pun intended, tap this guy and see if he remembers me and would be interested in having a dialogue. So yeah, uh,
And yes, I remembered you.
yes, yes. I wasn't sure at first. I'm like, hey, I don't know if you remember me. Because I don't know how much I've changed physically. It's hard for me to gauge that. And then I was like, I don't know. Like, anyway, this might be a good place to pause it because I actually have to plug my iPad in.
So it's so people who don't know and like why I'm laughing about this, like, because it's very like for a lot of people, um, you know, not knowing who you went to school with, right? But we graduated with 100 people and we were together, from all the way through school. And so, but I get it because there are people who are like, I don't remember you. And I'm like, really? That's interesting. Okay. Like, I'm not offended by it. I'm just like surprised because I feel like I could go through the yearbook and name everybody's picture, like who they were.
Yeah.
But that's also, I don't know. Maybe it's
I mean, you
ADHD
are,
recall.
yeah, I mean, you are right. We did have a very small, I don't even think it was 100. I want to say it was like 97, but
Mm,
yeah. But, I think we all just remember high school and grade school differently. I think it
for sure.
depends on like where we were during that time, and then of course like what's happened after, and like we're on a sobriety podcast, so we can assume some shit's gone down. But
Well, and mental
yeah,
health. So, you bring that side into
yeah, yeah.
sobriety and mental health podcast.
Yes, and I do. My questions do reflect that it is. I guess I am more like interested in sobriety,
Mm-hmm.
but like I think you'll find that my questions kind of go into both. So let's just start off with, I guess, as a listener of your podcast and of other, countless podcasts, I always like to kind of find in the chapter list or like the podcast list, like one that kind of lets me get to know the person I'm listening to a little bit. So I thought we could just start off with maybe you telling us just a little bit about yourself. Kind of, I know that's kind of a broad start, but just kind of give us some brush strokes of like who you are and what your background is, how old you are, where you're from, and kind of like where you are in your life right now.
So, my name's RJ Zimmerman. Um, I am 38. I'm originally from a small town outside of Green Bay, right on Lake Michigan. Um, you know, uh, grew up with a younger brother, younger sister. I don't know why I put them in that order. My sister's older than my brother, but um, my sister's 3 years younger. My brother's 4 years younger. So I'm the oldest of those three. And, um, I've kind of feel like the way that, growing up and everything, I kind of fell into like that typical male archetype a little bit. But when I talk about like going through school, and because we're a small class, that's why I wanted to tee that up. Like I was the person who I wasn't just a jock, right? Like, yes, I played sports. Sports were really important to me. Like really, the only reason that I did okay in school was because of sports. And it's funny because I didn't drink in school until our senior year at homecoming. And that was the only time I drank in school because I couldn't get caught and miss sports. Like that is the only reason. Um, but yeah, like I would be, with the jocks, quote unquote, and then I'd go and hang out with the nerds. And I spent most of my time with the nerds. And because I was going across that side, like a lot of them started to become friends. And so like I kind of became that bridge a little bit. And it's such a small school, maybe it would have happened anyway, but I did notice that kind of happened um, you know, with a little bit of help, I guess. But since then, I've been a high voltage line tech. I was a high voltage line tech. I was actually a foreman for almost 10 years in Wisconsin. About 11 years ago, I stopped drinking. Um, I guess I could touch on that quick. So the drinking part, being from Wisconsin, drinking is something that you're born into. It really is.
It's so
Whether your
true.
parents are drinkers or not, it's just something that is a part of the culture in a way that is um, very, very. It's just woven into the fabric of the
Yeah.
culture
Yeah.
in a way that is very. It's hard to describe unless you're in it, almost. And once people experience it, they're like, "Oh, this is Wisconsin," and I'm like,
Yeah.
"Yeah, this is Wisconsin." Um,
Yeah. It's kind of like, I mean, you're right. It's kind of hard to explain, but it's drinking is involved in everything. And I mean, a common adage of a Wisconsinite is beer is not drinking. So, like, you're not drinking if you're drinking beer. And so that kind of
yeah.
tells you a little bit. And I truly believe people believe that. Like, I think,
Mm-hmm.
unfortunately, it's been said so much that people believe that. But anyway,
Absolutely. So first time I got drunk, it was after homecoming. I was like, oh, this is a special event. I'll get drunk. And it was like putting active noise canceling headphones on for the first time, where my brain kind of just shut up for the first time. I didn't have that critic. And I felt accepted by our peers. So, like, everybody I felt like was like, oh, RJ, you're doing this. And I just felt more accepted. And so I was like, oh, this is freaking awesome. This is great. So I got really drunk that night. Didn't again until we graduated. And then was when I really started. And when I got to college, it was like I was a binge drinker. So I would go the week without drinking, but Thursday, Friday, Saturday, sometimes Sunday, listen, I'm getting it. And then it turned into Tuesday through, Saturday. And I never got out of anytime that I drank, I would drink all of it. And so the last couple of years, I knew that I was getting to a point where I was going to have to stop drinking because I would drink to the point of blacking out um, and just make horrible decisions. I went back to our hometown and actually, two people we went to high school with, they were who I would drink with. And I got super hammered that night, and it was my first 2-day hangover. And I called my girlfriend at the time, and I said, "Hey, or I think I texted because I couldn't even talk. I said, "Hey, I'm not gonna be able to make it. I'm not feeling good." And I got a text back that said, "That's all right. I wasn't expecting you to be here anyway." And I was like, "Damn, that's true though. I can't say anything bad about it because I didn't make it." And so I'm feeling like crap. I can't even keep water down till 2 a.m. the next morning was the first time I was able to take a drink of water and keep it down. Um, I looked in the mirror and I'm just like, okay, I can start a family and start a career, or I can drink alcohol. I can't do both. And this was when I was 27. And so it was like, okay, I want to start a family. I want to get a career, which was being, high voltage line tech. And that was the moment. And luckily I'm a stubborn asshole. And that's one area where being a stubborn asshole can come into benefit. Okay. I'm not going to drink anymore and I'm going to be stubborn about it. And so I became a high voltage line tech in the Madison, Wisconsin area for almost 10 years. About 3 years ago, I moved to Virginia Beach I have two kids, so I'm a dad now, and I've gone through a divorce. So I got married. I actually without sober. So got hired at my career, married, left that career, moved cross country, got divorced, all sober. And so now I'm in the having that dating experience again for the first time, sober. And that has been something crazy. So that's kind of where I am now. I'm also, I'm an alcohol-free life coach. I still do some electrical work, and I really do just love to be there for people and kind of show them that there's a different way to be able to live that doesn't involve alcohol, and you can have even more fun than you were having before because you actually put yourself in that box with alcohol and you didn't even realize it.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, you kind of answered my next question, which was what was the catalyst to your sobriety? And it sounds like, just to kind of reiterate what you said, it's like alcohol was medicine for you in a way because it kind
Yep.
of helped your ADHD symptoms. Is that right?
Yes, thank you for bringing that up because that's something that I missed. I got diagnosed after my youngest child was born. They're about a year and a half apart, so it was a very stressful time. Um, and I got diagnosed with ADHD, and it was like learning how ADHD manifests, learning how it shows up. I've been able to backtrack and realize that, oh, I was self-medicating for ADHD and I didn't even realize it in a lot of different moments and a lot of different parts. And so that explains a lot of why, having the all or nothing mentality, the binge drinking, but also why I wanted to shut my brain up because it never would. It still doesn't. Still working on that part.
Yeah, but I mean, at least, part of your journey has been understanding the why behind binge drinking and like addiction.
Mm,
And I think that is like how where you start bridging the sobriety aspect with the mental health aspect,
yeah.
right? And
Yeah,
so,
absolutely.
I
Some
mean, yeah, you go.
something that I mentioned in my story was how I felt accepted by my peers for the first time. And I was in the, a couple years ago, I was kind of looking at why did I drink the way that I drink? What was it that drew me in the first time that I got drunk? And I remembered that acceptance. And then I followed that back and I was like, wait a second, there's something to that. And I realized that it was because I wasn't accepting myself. And then when I took that back, sports, like why I tried so hard at sports, like what was my reason for trying so hard at sports? To be accepted, to be liked. Why was that? Because I wasn't accepting or liking myself because I never did. Okay. I was sometimes, I'd go through these phases of being the class clown. Okay. Why was I doing that? Well, I wanted to be accepted and liked. Okay. Why was that? Because I couldn't accept and like myself. Okay. Go back. Being the smart kid and getting praised for good grades, right? Or a smart kid. Why did I do that? Because I would be accepted and liked. And then I flip flop that, later grade school, I would know answers, never raise my hand, act like I didn't know, right? And like dumb myself down. Why would I do that? So that I'd be accepted and liked instead of thought of as this smarty pants goody two shoes, right? And so recognizing that is like, okay, how do I start accepting myself? And that was something that really led to growth and healing in a way that was like, wow, I didn't realize I needed to do this. And it's crazy how far back I can trace it and see that loop throughout my life.
Right, right. Which kind of leads into my next kind of talking points here, which is I feel like your ethos is centered around self help, introspection, and then sobriety. And for you, what came first? Like, uh, was it the self help journey or was it sobriety?
Well, it's interesting that you put it that way because um, when I stopped drinking, I didn't call myself sober for 6 years. It was actually starting this podcast when I finally started calling myself sober. Um, or just tell people I didn't drink, and that was kind of it. But in high school, I had a class with Mr. Leahy, psychology, right? And like that psychology class, like opened my world to like the philosophy of the mind and being human and just like all of this. And it was so interesting to me that that was my major. That's what I was going to go do. I was going to college to be a therapist, do something with psychology, anything. I didn't care what it was. I just wanted to do something with psychology. Um, and I've always had this introspection about me. Like I've always assumed the responsibility and, I can make changes about this. Um, but what I didn't do, and this was after I quit drinking and after the podcast started and after the, really leaning into the sobriety, was start to look at how to heal, how to understand how I deserve good things. And I've been keeping good things from myself. And what can I do to look at myself in a different light? Because, um, yeah. So the way that you framed it, I would probably say that the introspection and the self, like the introspection came first, then the sobriety, then the self help side of it is the way that I would put that.
Yeah.
Hmm.
All
That's a good
right.
question. Thank you for asking that.
Yeah, I mean, I realize they do go hand in hand, and sometimes it's hard
Mm-hmm.
to kind of separate it, but um, I feel like sobriety is very tangible and specific, and
Mm-hmm.
I personally know people in my own life that don't do the introspective work. They don't do the self help kind of as they would call it mumbo jumbo or like, but they know well enough that they need to be sober, and like that's enough. Like it's
Mm-hmm.
like I think that gives them the free pass to say, look, I'm not going to go digging, I'm not going to go introspecting myself because I'm sober, and that's as best as I'm going to do for myself or whatever. And hey, I'm not judging that journey, but I think that there can be so much more to it than just doing that. Is it the first step? Is it the last step? I think it's different for everybody, but like um but yeah, so
I love that. I like to say, my story is unique, and I don't recommend people follow like the steps that I did to get to where I am. There's better ways to do it, but my story is unique to me. Your story is unique to you. Everybody's story is unique. So take the things that work for you and use them, and then the things that don't, you can leave them. But there is a way to go deeper into life if you want, right? Into yourself. And if you feel like you're just kind of stuck, right? In that like not even in that middle, just with what you're doing, you're stuck, you're not moving. Something you feel like there's something more, but you don't know where to get. That's why I was stuck for so long. Like that's what I want to share to people is how you get unstuck a lot of times is looking inward and looking at yourself in a different way.
yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well, now this is gonna sound weird because it's we are getting personal, but I'd like to just go a little bit deeper. Like, can you tell me like what personal trials and tribulations led you to where you are today? I'm looking for more specifics, like something that can help your listeners get to know who you really are. Um, I just feel like nowadays there's just so much self-help
Mhm.
mumbo jumbo out there. And for me, it's only been helpful when I've been able to make a genuine connection with the source through a shared experience or just being able to totally empathize with someone's personal backstory. Um, so like, I think like the you've given us kind of generalized um ideas and sentiments, but like what what's more like your specific story of why you're sober and why you can't fuck around with that anymore, like clearly,
Mm.
you made a clear and conscious choice to be sober, and you went through, like you said at the beginning of the podcast, you've gone through a divorce, you've gone through a move, you've entered the dating pool again, and you're not drinking. Like, um was it something in your childhood? You've mentioned like that you're healing from something. What are you healing from? Are you you know
So there's so much there. So it's like, okay, what path do I go? I think the most the most healing I've had to do is around emotions and feelings and actually feeling them. Growing up, I was not allowed to have emotions and feelings. Actually, I wasn't allowed to have needs. I was barely allowed to have wants. I was taking care of my brother and sister, keeping them in line. Um, you know, cleaning and like doing the yard work, doing a lot of the chores around the house. Um, a lot was of responsibility was put on me from a young age. Like I want to say at 9 or 10, it might have been 8 actually. Like I was watching my brother and sister by myself, right? Like you do that shit now,
yeah.
right? So like I I was walking home alone from school at 6,
Mm-hmm.
because it's a small town. Like everybody knows my parents. So yeah, I'll find my way. I remember the first time I walked home and I got lost. But along with that, right, is being raised in a hyper masculine um, household, right? You don't cry, don't show weakness, don't show pain, don't, um, you don't talk about like your needs or your wants, right? You just basically put your head down and work. And there was, it's not to say like there was no fun, because there was, but a lot of this that was put onto me like went to showing up in sports, right? Like the only, I mean, I'm sure you remember this, and maybe everybody out here will not believe this, but in school, I was the hothead, right? I was the high tempered person. I don't know if you remember it, but like there's legends of my blowups. Like I kicked everybody out of my house one time. I said, "Get the fuck out of my house right now!" Like, and kicked them out. Why? Because they were teasing me too much, and I had enough of it. There was a time in study hall, my mom was picking on me. Thanks, mom. And then my friends got in. Then my mom was picking on me some more. I stood up and threw my graphing calculator against the front stage in study hall, and um, so there was just there was a lot. And then on top of that, there was there was a lot expected of me, and I knew that, and I thought I had to live up to it. And so like that perfectionist, like I had to be perfect, because if I wasn't
So
perfect, I was a
were
burden.
right. Were you the I'm sorry, were you the oldest?
Yeah.
I think you said that. Okay, so you're the oldest
Yeah.
kid in a hyper masculine kind of household.
Mm-hmm.
And so that pressure to be, that typical kind of, I mean, what they call now toxic masculine or whatever,
Yeah.
was really high for you, it sounds like.
Mm-hmm.
It sounds like, and not only you didn't, it's not like you had older siblings to fall back on or kind of disappear for a little while. Like, in some families, the middle kid can disappear or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But in your case, and from what I remember, your mom was very involved in your life, in your school life, because she was active in school.
Yeah.
And I know she was really into sports too.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure there was a lot of pressure there for you to maintain your masculinity, by being in these sports and being good at them, being good in school because you're the firstborn and you don't want to disappoint, and forgetting or maybe never even knowing who you really are
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
because you're
And
just fulfilling expectations.
absolutely. And going through school too, like I wanted to do good in school and not be a problem, right? There were times I was, but not be a problem, to set a good standard for my brother and sister. So like when the teacher was like, "Oh, I know your older brother," they wouldn't get a, "Oh, great, I know your older brother," right? They get a,
Yeah.
"Oh, I know your older brother," and they start off on a good foot. That was the whole reason that I wanted to do that, too. So like, and this, I want people to understand, like, this isn't me bashing my parents or my childhood or anything like that. I'm just
Yeah.
setting the
No.
stage for it.
Yeah.
They did the best they could with what they had
Mm.
have, and they still do. Like, that's people do the best they can with what they have. It's seeing that other perspective and seeing that there's different ways. So as I'm going, like I took this can't show pain, can't feel pain, to the point where I broke my wrist in a basketball game and I went back in and played. I
Very
broke my
masculine.
I broke
Very
my wrist
masculine.
playing a slow pitch softball game, and I stayed in and swung with one hand and hit a home run. And I get
Mm-hmm.
done, right? And this is just kind of like the society, the how it was back then. And there's still pockets, that still is. I'm like, "Hey dad, can you take me to the hospital tomorrow morning?" Because it was a Saturday. It was a Friday night that this happened, and I was drinking, of course, after the game. He's like, "Why?" I'm like, "I need x-rays." He's like, "What happened?" I'm like, "Oh, I caught a ball. I caught it. I was like, I still caught it, but I rolled up and I'm pretty sure I broke my wrist." And he's like, "Really?" I'm like, "Yes." And then the guy next to me was like, "Well, Ray Nitschke, the old Packers linebacker, Ray Nitschke had a streetlight fall on him. You know what they said? Well, let's keep going to practice. It's only Nitschke. What did he do? He got up and kept on running." And I turned to him and I'm like, "Well, I stayed in the game and I played and I actually hit a home run with one hand." He's like, "Oh."
Yeah.
And I'm like that's what's expected of you. So that's what I did. So cut to getting married and having kids and realizing, like, when being a dad and like an expectant dad, looking at how I want to be a father and how I want to show up as a parent and things that I'd like to do different. Not that there were necessarily mistakes, but just things that are more important to me. And recognizing that I don't know necessarily what it is, other than I want to respect my kids' intelligence and just be more from that side to bring them into to life, to be able to explain things and not just say, "Do it this way because I said so." So I'm a dad going through, like, having troubles with my wife. She comes to me and asks for a divorce. Part of it is because can't have emotional conversations. And I'm like, "Well, I can't have emotional conversations because I don't know what I'm feeling." She's like, "Okay, you got to do something about that." So I go to therapy and they hand me the emotions wheel. And let me tell you, I hate this fucking emotions wheel because they hand it to everybody. And I look at it and I hand it back to her and I say, "Do you have anything in English?" She's like, "Well, that is English." Like, "What do you mean? This is," I'm like, "Exactly. It could be French. Like, I don't understand what these words are. I can tell you what anger is, tell you what sadness is. I can't even tell you what happiness is. I can't even tell you what glad is, but I can tell you what those other two are. That's it, though. That's all I can read on there. And when I started to recognize that, actually, I was doing the podcast at the time. My 3-year-old was more emotionally intelligent than me in naming his emotions, understanding them, and everything. And I was like, yeah, my 3-year-old, he's more emotionally intelligent than me. And I'm like going through this journey of figuring out my emotions and wanting to talk about it, save my marriage, right? Try to. And all of a sudden it hit me. Wait, my 3-year-old's more emotionally intelligent than me. That is not something that I should be proud of. Like, I'm proud of how emotionally intelligent he is.
Yeah.
I'm a 36, 35, 34-year-old man. He's more emotionally intelligent than me at 3. That is a bad thing. What can I do? So recognizing that, like, my entire world was a black hole. Um, my entire world was like, I didn't know what was going on inside of me. I just knew there wasn't something right. I knew that there was, like, I always felt on edge. I always felt like I was fighting against something. Um, like, people were watching to be able to, like, turn on me. This showed up, in friendships that I would make, co-working relationships. The ones that, like, I'd gravitate towards were the people who were really hard on me and, like, I could never do anything right.
You would gravitate
And
to.
I would gravitate, like, the people who are like, hey, you're great to work with. I really love working with you. Like, you're doing an amazing job. You're further along at this stage than a lot of people would be. And I'd be like, yeah, sure. But the people who tell me, wow, you suck, you're a piece of shit. Like, that's the opinion that I'd go to for things, because I want to turn their opinion around. Right.
Do you think that's because of your childhood and not, I mean, again, I don't like throwing parents under the bus either, but do you think your parents were hard on you like that?
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's kind of what you thought was normal. I mean, that
Yep.
that was kind of, it was a comfort for you to get kind of
Yes.
um,
Absolutely.
berated. Or,
Well, to not be able to please, right? To
yeah.
not be able to do things right, correct, well. Um, and when we used to record the podcast, my ex-wife would take the kids out to play, so that it'd be a little bit quieter in the house. And one day, like, it was a low mental health day for me because we're going through the divorce. I was in a brand new place, didn't have any friends, didn't know anybody. And my kids come running inside and they yell, Daddy, I love you. I missed you. And because I was doing so much, like, introspection and trying to figure out, like, my feelings and stuff like that, I heard this little voice inside of me say, how could you love such a piece of shit? What is wrong with you? And in that moment, I was like, what? Where did that come from? What? I'm holding it against my kids that they love their dad? That's not right. So later on that night, I looked in the mirror and I've to stare. And I noticed there was this slight, like, physical recoil, and I hated what I saw. And the truth of how I viewed myself my entire life came out in that moment, in that I hated myself. I hated myself with a burning passion. Like, I was one of the worst people on this planet. And so much of my life clicked in those moments of why I would put myself through that pain and be like, you're not feeling anything. Stop being a fucking wuss. You're not feeling any pain, right? Like, no, it hurts when you break your wrist. Listen,
Yeah.
go back in the game. Like, there's so many times, like, I would get hurt and it's like, nope, gotta fight through it. Gotta go through it. Nobody fucking cares. You don't matter, right?
Yeah.
Like, you don't matter. Keep going. Nobody's stopping for you. And I was like, okay, I want to correct this because I don't want my kids to, for me to hold it against my kids that they love their dad. I can't have that. And I was like, okay, could I say, what's the opposite of hate? Love. Could I say I love myself? Fuck no. No, I can't say that. Right? Like, hell no. And even, like, looking, like, right now saying, RJ, I love you. Like there's not as much recoil and like, bile that comes up. Like I want to throw up, but it still feels disingenuous a little bit. Not as much. Like I'm getting there. I'm getting there. Um, so I was like, okay, could I say I like you? No, absolutely not. Not then I couldn't. Now I can. Now I can say I like myself, but back then I couldn't. So I was like, okay, could I say that I'm just okay? Could I get like to that neutral? I was like, yeah, I think I would be okay saying that I'm okay. So I'd shrug my shoulders to stop myself from recoiling back and I'd say, you're okay. And every moment after that, that I would find myself being really hard on myself. Like I made dinner and it didn't turn out perfect. I'd be like, you fucking suck as a cook. How dare you cook like something so crappy, right? And I'd be like, well, it's okay. It's all right, right? Just like interrupt it. It's okay.
Yeah, there's nobody there anymore that's judging you. I mean,
Yeah.
right? Except
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
But you've been conditioned that there's somebody there, your mom, your dad, your siblings, your teachers, your coach, your
Mm.
wife. I don't know what happened there, but I'm just, I mean, I think
Well, I already told you
it's,
about the friends and coworkers I was attracted to. So
yeah,
what do you think that was?
yeah.
No,
So,
she's a good mom. She's a good mom. Um, but I will say that that cycle did hold true.
yeah. Well, and it makes sense. And it sounds like I mean, we're all on a journey to get to know ourselves, but
Yeah.
it sounds like to me you're finally allowing yourself to get to know who you really are. And you can't love yourself if you don't know yourself, and
Ooh.
um
Yes. Yes.
I mean, that's been my journey. Is like the more I get to know myself, the more I kind of allow myself to like myself, then maybe to love myself, right? Or love those parts of me.
Mm.
Um, but it's impossible when you don't know yourself, and it's easy to hate yourself when you don't know yourself. You have no appreciation for who you really are, because you're trying to be somebody you're not, or somebody other people want you to be, and you will never live up to that in your head, so you'll always
Mm.
hate yourself.
Yes.
Um, and yeah, I mean, part of knowing who you are and getting to know who you are is removing those people or removing yourself from those situations so you can.
Mm-hmm.
And I think like somewhere along your journey, it just started to happen, maybe organically, naturally. And then you kind of took hold of that in some ways and harnessed that, that's what it
Yes.
sounds like to me, at least.
Yeah. It was actually the podcast. Like until we started doing the podcast, because I first started doing the podcast with my brother-in-law, and because he is also sober, and we'd have these really great conversations on the golf course. And it's like, okay, let's take that and put it in a podcast. Because one of the most powerful things for me when I stopped drinking was listening to a podcast by Chris Hardwick called Nerdist. And he would talk to celebrities and stuff. They talk about being sober and like stopping drinking and all this. And I'm like, this feels great. And so we'd started that, and we started to branch out into more mental health stuff. And as we were like started to have more guests on and stuff like that, I'm like, their story, there's something in there that resonates with me. What is that? Right. And so I'd try it on. And then it's like, oh, I'm starting to understand like where some of these cycles are coming from, where some of these parts where I'm getting in my own way, where I'm like you said, we had a house, we had two kids and a dog. We had, I was a foreman and like, really highly thought of in the company. Like I had a really great job. We had a small business that we started together, like that was doing really, really well. Family around us, and I still felt empty. I still felt like there has to be more to life than this. I still felt like I wasn't doing things that I wanted to do. I felt it's hard to describe because it was just like empty. I just felt empty.
Mm-hmm.
And I was supposed to be able to get to all this stuff, and I would feel amazing. I'd be happy. I'd feel successful. I would feel, I just didn't. Like when I got the foreman job, I never celebrated. I never congratulated myself. I was just kind of like, well, I fell into this. Right.
Yeah.
And like, it's, yeah. When I look back at it, it's like, wow, there really was nobody harder, and there still isn't anybody harder on me than myself. But on that other side of it, I was not a friend to myself either. I didn't have that friendship with myself. I didn't have that other side. I was just hard on myself, and that was it. So of course I started hating myself.
So do you think and you didn't know yourself, do you
Yeah.
think like looking back, you wanted all those things that you had, or was that just like a version of yourself that, was a good optional version of yourself that you succeeded at?
Well, when I talked about growing up, I wasn't allowed to have needs or wants. So I was always told this is what I should want. So that's what I took on to think that that's what I
Yeah.
wanted. So then, like
Yeah.
you said, as I started to attain it, it's like, okay, this is nothing. This isn't okay. This is something like,
Yeah.
it's just, it wasn't filling me up because it wasn't my dream. It wasn't my goals. It
Hmm.
wasn't my needs. It wasn't my wants.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, that is absolutely it. Like doing the podcast and like connecting with people and becoming a coach and coaching people, like that leaves me feeling fulfilled. And there's parts of like the teaching part of being a high voltage line tech, loved. It made me feel fulfilled. I absolutely love that side of it. There's parts of doing the job that I really loved and felt fulfilled, but there are just other aspects of my life that it left me wanting.
Yeah. And I think that it's true for all of us. There is a part of us that is created by our parents, by our upbringing, right? That it's kind of uncontrollable to an extent. And so that's why there is probably fulfillment. You do get fulfilled out of that type of work because it is part of you to an extent. It
Mm-hmm.
sounds like you are, though, doing your podcast, doing your coaching. And I'm sorry, is your coaching sobriety coaching or life coaching? What is it? Can you talk about that more?
It's a mixture of both. So just like everything else that I
That,
do, it's
yeah.
like, it's not like one thing. So I created a 12-week self-discovery course. Um, it can involve stopping drinking alcohol, can involve stopping drinking, smoking weed. It can involve, you know, getting over a relationship that like you pour yourself into and that was your identity.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's really just those beginning steps to get you to a place to be honest with yourself about where you are, right? Like, what
Mm-hmm.
is it you're feeling? What is it that you are contributing to the situation? And, with alcohol, it could be, what is it you're looking for from alcohol? Really? Is it,
Mm-hmm.
is it really giving you what you're looking for? Is it really a feeling you might be looking for? Or is it something else? And then, but like, there's so much in life like that, whether it's, work or sugar or, here's one that people, um, might be like, well, that's not me, is parenting. These parents that put their entire lives and identity around being a parent, around their kids. And you're not actually living for yourself and bringing them into it. And so that's a detriment, right? You're you're escaping
Yeah.
yourself with something else. You are. And there's a lot of, and that could be harsh terms about escaping, but
No. I mean,
if you're
I would have
honest,
totally agree. I would have
yeah.
totally agree with you.
So the first 5 weeks are self-honesty, like really digging into that and like just getting better at looking inside to identify what's going on. The second 5 weeks are self-exploration. And really it's okay, I can identify these things. Now what do I do with them? And it, has emotions and feelings. It has like stories, facts, how you can decipher them and act on some and leave some behind. Um, things like that. And then the last 2 weeks are about self-acceptance. And how do I take everything that I know about myself and are there, and how do I make it more permanent? How do I make it more, so that I can keep going back to it? And this is not something that is only going to be there for 12 weeks, but it's something I can continue to expand on and go to in times that I need it.
Yeah. Cool. So
Yeah.
that all right, cool. That answered that question.
Yeah.
Um I hope that you do have some link in your podcast for your coaching.
Mm-hmm.
Do you?
Yeah. Yeah, there is. You
Oh,
can go to untapkedkeg.com and be able to fill out an application. And, I do one-on-one and group coaching. So if people just want like that one-on-one style, and then you can also get that course at udemy.com, UDEMY.
okay. Um, Speaking, by the way, I do love the untapped keg name. I think it's such a great metaphor. Because I believe that in all of us there's an untapped, I don't want to say potential because it kind of puts too much pressure on productivity, but there's an untapped version or an untapped so
Source.
many, yeah, or ideas or whatever inside you.
Mm.
And also the play on words there with alcohol and the opposite uh of that. And speaking of that, do you prescribe to like a certain sobriety um uh doctrine or ethos, like AA or some other type of sobriety rules and regulations, or how, I guess, how do you navigate sobriety? um how do you stay sober? How do you you know you navigate that? I know some people go to AA meetings their whole life. I go to Al-Anon meetings, which is affiliated with AA, but it's for family members of uh we all have kind of our own thing, and I'm just curious
Mm-hmm.
what yours is, if any.
So I stopped drinking, like I said, because like by being a stubborn asshole. So that's I didn't do AA, and the reason that I didn't do it was because I didn't want homework. Like I was like,
Mm-hmm.
I did fucking homework enough. I'm not doing it anymore. Um, and so I just wanted to remove something from my life. Everybody's journey is unique. And so I think trying multiple different things, like you said, there's AA, there's Al-Anon, there's a Buddhist version, there's the secular version, I can't remember, like Smart Recovery. Um, there's so many different ones if you look it up, and it might not be TLC, the luckiest club. Um, Tempest used to be one. I don't know what it's called anymore. But I specifically coach in This Naked Mind and their methodology, which is, it's science backed, compassion led method to stop people from drinking or help people. Really, what it is, it's not even stop people from drinking, it's develop a healthier relationship with alcohol. And so, what does a healthy relationship with alcohol look like to you, to the person who's hearing this? What does a healthy relationship with alcohol look like? Like, you've never asked yourself that question. Like, for
Yeah,
me,
yeah,
my healthy relationship with alcohol is I don't want to drink it. And why don't I
yeah.
want to drink it? Well, it's not because I necessarily can't have it. I don't want it. I don't want to alter my mind. Like, I don't want to go away from me after I've done all this work to come home to myself, essentially, to like be okay with who I am, to enjoy the person that is here. Like, somebody that I'm actually proud of. I never thought I could be proud of myself until I was. And the moment
Mhm.
that I realized I was proud of myself, I bawled like a baby.
No.
Like, that is something that I didn't touch on, but like from the time I was 12 till the time I was 35, I cried 5 times. 5 times, that's it.
Wow.
And I didn't even cry when I found out my grandpa died. And I was really close to my grandpa. Like that's how deep it went. And then I started to realize it's okay to cry. And then I bawled all the time, right? But um that's something like that I'm proud of now, that I can tap into those emotions and feel them and be good with them. And alcohol just does not, it's not conducive to me being able to do that. So my healthy relationship is not drinking.
And I
To
think
some
you bring a great point to it, is that, in this, AA is total abstinence from alcohol. And I think you're spot on with like the we all have to define what healthy is, and for me as well, unfortunately, I wish I could have alcohol. So I'm a little bit of the opposite of you. I do kind of wish I could have it in a healthy way, but unfortunately, I've learned lessons um, through my sobriety and then through relapsing. I'm not crazy about that word, but
At this naked mind, we call them data points,
what was that?
because we call them data points because there's always data you can learn from the time that you drink, especially if you don't want to. If your healthy relationship is to stop drinking and that's what you want to get to, and you drink, we call it a data point because you can
Okay.
get data from that.
It's so true. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yes, but I think for a lot of people, sometimes it's actually just realizing and analyzing their relationship and saying, wait a minute, let me step back from these habits. Let me step back
Mm.
from how I was raised and say, what actually works for me? Because it's so easy to let it get out of control. I mean, even if you're not from Wisconsin like you and me are, it's still so much part of culture in general. Like,
Mm-hmm.
alcohol is usually at every adult situation. It's at movie theaters now. It's everywhere you go, you have the option to get buzzed. I mean, especially now with marijuana
Mm-hmm.
legalizing, the culture of intoxication, of altering your state of mind with uh alcohol and marijuana, and it's just so prevalent. We're saturated in it, and I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it, but it's easy to get lost in it and to very quickly assume you need it for all of your downtime, or you need it for all of your social time or your relaxed time. And without turning it too much about me, but for me, you made a point about doing things without alcohol, and that you actually, for you have more fun. And I would agree that I'm actually able to be much more present with the whatever it is, the fun, when I'm sober, and I can actually deeply feel it and be present with whatever I'm doing that is right. If it's a birthday party, celebrating a friend's birthday party, or going out to see a movie, or it it reconnects you to your inner child, like, or your lost child, or the child you never had a chance to allow to be a child because you were too busy taking care of your siblings and watching your grades, and your and it's so much fun, right? It's so much fun
Yeah.
to like allow yourself to just enjoy something so humble and something, you know it's very childlike. And yeah, and so if that is all the time, which for me that's what it has to be, but or if that's most of the time and sometimes you drink or whatever, like just redefining all that in your life, taking that time, and it's a gift to yourself to do so. I think is, and I'm happy that um your 12 week program doesn't require abstinence. You know, it's
Hmm.
not setting up standards or even rules about it, which I think is really healthy. I'm not saying that. I think some people really do have to stop drinking. I mean, it
Yeah.
all depends where they are on that spectrum. But um and I think that makes it approachable, right? I think it makes it approachable because anyone could benefit from it, even if they don't necessarily have a problem with drinking. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, I think anybody who evaluates, well, what am I looking for from drinking? Do I think that's the only time I'm fun? Do I think that's the only time I'm funny or people like me? Like that's what I thought. So if I was going to be social, I needed to drink, like because that's the only time that people think I'm funny. That's the only time they think I'm fun. That's the only time they want to be around me. That's the only time that women think that I'm attractive. Like that is one thing that I attributed to alcohol. Like that's that is absolutely like things that I attributed to it. So if you have a healthy relationship with alcohol, it's just a drink to you. Like it's just something that you drink. And yeah, it makes your brain feel a little bit fuzzy and like that's it. Like that's how I define it. For that's what I would say it is. But if you're looking for something from alcohol, that's probably an unhealthy relationship with it because it's not something that can really give you anything if you're
Yeah.
honest.
Yeah.
Um,
And
that's the
that's
first time
very,
I defined it that way, actually. So
yeah. Well, that's
stream of
pretty,
conscious.
yeah, that's deep, I think. And I would totally agree with that sentiment. I don't think when you, especially when you're using it in an unhealthy way, alcohol
Mm.
doesn't do anything for you. If you are using it in a healthy way, and if you have a healthy relationship with it, then it might do something for you. Um, but it's only if you have that healthy relationship with it. As soon
Yeah.
as you and isn't that true for anything? Any relationship, you
Yes.
know, as soon as
Yeah.
it goes into the unhealthy bracket or whatever, it stops helping you.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
And honestly, like it gets to a point where it consumes you, right?
yeah,
It papers over the top of yourself and you lose yourself to what that is, whether it's your entire self or pieces of yourself or this part that you forgot. I know that I found myself doing things that I thought I enjoyed when I drank. I like look, I used to think like I had the most fun when I would drink. But looking back at it and being really honest with myself, I can count two or three times that while I was drinking, I actually had fun. Otherwise, it was either before I started drinking that I actually had fun, and then I started drinking and it did something
yeah,
else,
yeah, yeah,
or it was after I had stopped drinking and I was able to actually stop, and then that there was fun times there, but it was never actually during that I actually had fun. But that's just my story. And
yeah.
people are like, "Oh, come on, there were moments." It's like, no, honestly, if I think back to actually drinking, I was not having fun.
Hmm.
I
Yeah.
wasn't. And so like I was masking over the top of a lot
Yeah.
of different things. That doesn't mean like I didn't enjoy myself. It just means that it wasn't as fun as I thought it was, like that I
Yeah.
romanticized it being.
Yeah. And I think that comes with having years of sobriety under your belt, where those kind of answers
Mm.
aren't clear at first because you
Oh
don't
yeah.
have that perspective. You don't have the years of sobriety. Okay, I've had how many birthdays sober? And now when I stack up whatever it is, 3, 4, 5 years of sober birthdays to you know 8 years of drinking birthdays, what has been more fulfilling and what has been more fun? You actually have that perspective to kind of do the Pepsi challenge of, and okay, if I'm being honest, you could say, I mean, it all, and you're right, it depends on the person, but what is what was more fun, or what was more fulfilling and meaningful, right? Like for me, I don't think I have as much fun when that I'm sober. I'm not gonna lie and sugarcoat this, but I will say that I have much more meaningful, fulfilling moments than I ever had before. And that's okay that it's different now, and that I had something in the past that was, wild, drunken, fun nights, and now I have more. The nights definitely last longer to me, I guess. I remember them, they're clearer. I have more deeper connections with people now in my life because I'm not
Mm.
just drunk talking with somebody at a party. I'm actually making a connection with somebody now, so it's a different existence. And I think that's okay. Like I think a lot of people are afraid to go sober or afraid to change their relationship with alcohol because they think they're going to miss out. And well, I can say on the other side, and it sounds like you can as well, that you're also missing out something on this side of it. There's worthwhile emotions and feelings and things that happen over on this side too. So, um,
Yeah,
which
absolutely. And, you know, recognizing that difference and giving yourself the space to grieve sometimes that maybe it was you spent all this time doing this and you thought it was fun, but it actually wasn't as fun.
yeah,
Oh shit. Like being honest about that, I wasted my time. It's like, well, did you waste your time? Like, what does that mean to waste your time? Honestly, what does it mean to waste your time? Or did you learn something from it, whether it was years later? If you
right.
learn something from it, is that a waste of time?
No, I mean, I
So,
don't think so.
like it's like, but also understanding, like, yeah, I could have been doing something more productive or something I enjoyed or
More
being
meaningful.
yourself. Like that,
Yeah,
that is true too. Like all of this, it's okay to understand and be with these multiple different aspects of life. And when you learn that it's not just okay, like it's I don't use this word often, but normal. Like people feel multiple things at multiple different times, and when you're okay with holding those two sometimes opposite ideas, now it's okay. Now I can feel what I'm actually drawn to as opposed to what I'm told I should be drawn to and going in that direction.
right. Yeah. And speaking of that, to kind of start wrapping things up here for this session, where do you think your next step is? I mean, you're a dad of young kids, you're single. Where's your next step?
It is definitely so it's healing with people, like healing in relationship, but I don't just mean a romantic relationship. I mean, friendships. Like I talked about, like that the cycle showed itself to me, coworkers, friends, just like acquaintances, like everywhere. So for me, like the next step is being present and honest and vulnerable in the moment, right? With somebody else in a way that could put me in a bad light, right? And being okay with that. It looks like, growing a connection with somebody and it being deeper and having those conversations and being like, this is something that I'm working through. Like this week is having a conversation. Hey, you did this thing and it bothered me, or you did this thing and it hurt me, or you did this thing and it's causing me to create this story about you or be resentful, right? Because I used to have to take those things and shove them down so far. And like that's part of what ruined my marriage, right? Is not bringing up the things that hurt me.
Not having an
And
honest relationship.
And
essentially,
yeah,
with yourself, so you can't
yeah,
have them with other people.
exactly. So recognizing what that is and actually having the conversation and calling it out, because part of that vulnerability is giving them the option of it not going the way that I want it to, right? Of um, ending things and things going like the worst case scenario, but knowing that on the other side, I'll be okay with it. I'll be okay no matter what.
Because you're being
So
true to yourself.
exactly.
Do
So
you
like
think
that's it. That's the next step.
that I think that that's one, it's just beautiful that you can acknowledge that you haven't been having honest relationships with other people in your life, and that that's actually a place you want to work on now. That's a beautiful next step. Do you think part of your inability to be have those honest relationship is again going back to your Wisconsin Midwest upbringing, which I feel is oftentimes, let's just keep everything kosher. Let's not be totally honest because we don't want to get people upset.
Yep. Keep the peace.
Be very polite, like to a
Yeah,
fault sometimes. Yeah,
absolutely. Yes.
yeah.
Yes. And it also comes to like recognizing when I am hurt. Like there's been times that because I wasn't allowed or allowing myself to recognize me being hurt, that I don't recognize it in the moment because I'll shut down, like I'll disassociate. I will just, everything's cut off and I'm numb, like snap of the finger. It is a superpower because in moments where that has to happen, like I can do it and we can move and like get shit done, right? Like in chaos, somebody like me is who you want there in that chaos.
Mhm.
Um, but in moments of connection and deepening that connection, it can make it difficult to, oh, what you just said there hurt me because you attacked my character, right?
Mhm.
And like recognizing that. So sometimes it's, hey, I need to revisit this thing, and it's actually bringing it up. And then it's okay, finding that perfect moment to bring it up. Oh, I can bring it up here. I don't want to ruin this mood. I don't want to ruin the vibes of what's going on, right? But the truth is, like that helps to make the vibes. It being like opening up to somebody like that, and all of a sudden you can talk about it and be honest, and like you said, connect and like have that honest relationship, like that helps to make the vibes. But there's a difference in our minds between knowing something and feeling it. And so I know that, but I haven't felt it yet, right? Or like leaning into it, or it's just taken root for me to not have to be top of mind and really mindful and like have to take a lot of energy to be able to do it. And so like
Yes.
those are the next steps for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's a perfect segue into the next podcast episode is authentic relationships with um, other people. I mean, we you talk about authentic relationship with self. I think that is a very common conversation in the self-help world is having an honest relationship with yourself, but how can you then bridge that into your everyday life? And yeah, so
Yeah. Yeah,
all
that's
right.
that would be great. I'd love to have that conversation. So
Well, it was really great talking to you today. I feel
thank
like I
you.
did learn I learned some more substance about you. I'm more excited to be hopefully be a part of and listen to your podcast, and I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. This was an amazing idea. I appreciate you putting together those questions and bringing this here and having this conversation with me. And I really look forward to having that conversation with you because I think it'll be really great, and it'd be wonderful for people to be able to hear a different perspective as well. Because a lot of what I've taken to deepen the relationship with myself has actually been from things that were related to relationships with other people. And so like I've taken that and been like, well, I could apply that to myself. I could apply that to myself. But then how do you, like you said, how do you take that and apply it to other people? And there's nuances. There's ways to do it. There's
Oh yeah.
context needed, right? And it could be so. Thank you, Garret. This
Oh
was
yeah.
really wonderful.
Of course.
I'm so excited for people to get to hear this and for it to be out there. So, is there anything you'd like to leave with the listeners?
Uh, keep listening as keep coming back. I think it's self-help, I think, is a journey and there is never an end to it. And I think it's all about that relationship with self-help and how healthy is that relationship. Um, and just make it part of your everyday, and have fun with it, and don't be afraid to make
Mm,
mistakes and laugh at yourself and fuck up royally some days. Just get back on it the next day. So yeah. And podcasts
I
like
love that.
Untapped, okay, will definitely help you get there. I like listening to you when I'm out walking the dog, or and I'm not like pressed to listen to every episode or even finish them all. And sometimes I fast forward. It's like just do what
Good.
you need to do to untap.
Tap yourself.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that. Thank you, Garret. This has
All
been so
right.
great.
Yeah.
Tune in to the next one and you know, or just stay vigilant, watch because it'll be coming. We'll definitely do that. So
Awesome.
appreciate you, Garret.
Yep.
Thanks
You too.
everybody. Let's be better today than we were yesterday, because at least if we don't make it, we tried. Have a
Yep.
great week, everybody. I love you.